We begin streaming tonight at 5:30 with Louisiana's influence on American culture.
The entire state, individuals from the entire state have contributed to all these different aspects of American music.
Tonight, how a former state leader is highlighting Louisiana's cultural impact as America celebrates its 250th birthday. Also tonight, a brutal Arctic blast expected to hit several parts of our nation over the next few days. A look at the many inches of snow already dumped in some areas. Crisis averted, President Trump taking back comments he made about Greenland after a meeting with world leaders in Switzerland. The new proposed deal moving forward. Taking action against ICE, community leaders around the Minnesota Twin Cities say they want immigration agents out of their city. Their plan to get them to leave. Clinton's held in contempt. Republicans move forward with a plan to put former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton behind bars. The investigation that got them here. Tonight, foodies rejoice. Several local restaurants are offering deals for Restaurant Week. The area's city offering dinner discounts. A clever cow going viral tonight for her unusual way of dealing with an itch. You have to see this to believe it. And Henry Blake's preparing us for the winter weather heading our way.
You're watching WAFB's streaming newscast, live and local, with Dion Guillory. This is 9 News at 5:30.
We begin streaming tonight at 5:30 with some major changes coming to your weather. A winter storm taking its shape. The winter storm watch has already been issued for parts of the state. Meteorologist Henry Blake starting us off tonight with what he is seeing. Henry.
Hey, well, today we've had the rain, but the big story is going to be the winter weather. You may have saw earlier today, winter storm watches have been issued for parts of southwestern Louisiana, but this is the latest. Notice all of these are winter storm watches from the Carolinas through Louisiana and into Texas, Oklahoma, and even parts of New Mexico. Locally, no watches in effect here for the WAB viewing area, but it's the Atchafalaya Basin on westward, Lafayette and Lake Charles winter storm watches for Saturday afternoon through Sunday evening due to the likelihood of ice accumulations. So what are we looking forward to with this winter storm that is coming this weekend? Well, still lots of uncertainties. You'll notice the latest from some of the weather models, keeping potentially some of those icier conditions to North Louisiana, at least according to the European model, whereas the American model, the GFS, does still have a good chance of us getting at least some type of minimal frozen precipitation across South Louisiana as we go into the weekend. Even if you don't get freezing rain, look at this. Morning lows in the teens and low 20s. Baton Rouge likely in the low 20s for next week. That's going to be on Monday and Tuesday mornings. And on top of that, hard freeze conditions likely, but look at Monday morning's forecast wind chills. New Roads, Macomb, Woodville, single digits feels like temperatures. Baton Rouge is going to feel like it's in the teens. So that's just the tip of the iceberg, so to say, as far as this winter storm's impact. So Leon, we'll talk more about the additional weather later on.
All right, Henry, it's going to be a shock to the system when that comes. Thank you. That Arctic blast already brutal in upstate New York tonight. People there digging out after a lake effect snowstorm dumped more than 20 inches, causing lake effect snow. You can see the people trying to dig out of that. Authorities responded to multiple crashes involving roughly 60 vehicles over a 6-mile stretch of highway. They had to divert traffic and shut down all westbound lanes of one interstate there. The brutal winter weather getting set to get worse for many, with the most extreme winter storm so far this season forecast to slam the eastern half of the U.S. with damaging ice and heavy snow. Developing tonight, President Donald Trump announcing a framework of a future deal on Greenland. He arrived in Switzerland to meet with world leaders and deliver a highly anticipated speech at the World Economic Forum. Erica Brown with those details from Washington.
As President Trump flew on Marine One to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, this message of protest saying Trump go home was carved out in the snow. While tensions remain high with European leaders over his demand to acquire Greenland, the president said Wednesday that he's ruled out the use of military force to take over the territory.
I won't do that. Okay, now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force.
Denmark rejected Trump's call for immediate negotiations to buy Greenland. But later in the day, the president said he may have a future deal with NATO instead.
I'll be discussing it with this man right here. Mr. President, he's frankly more important.
Trump posted on social media that the U.S. and NATO had reached a framework of a deal and added, this solution, if consummated, will be a great one for the United States of America and all NATO nations. In addition to his push for Greenland stirring concerns about weakening relations with Europe, President Trump used his speech in Davos to take some swipes at American allies.
They're destroying themselves. These beautiful, beautiful places. We want strong allies, not seriously weakened ones. We want Europe to be strong.
Shortly after Trump's remarks, the European Parliament suspended ratification of a trade deal between the U.S. and the European Union secured by the president last year. Erica Brown, CBS News, Washington.
Well, President Trump announcing today that he was canceling his planned tariff on U.S. allies in Europe over U.S. control of Greenland after he and the leaders of NATO agreed to a framework of a future deal on Arctic security. Now, the abrupt about-face emerged hours after he had insisted that he wants to get Greenland, including right, title, and ownership, but said he would not use force to do so while deriding European allies and vowing that NATO should not try to block U.S. expansionism. Governor Jeff Landry also talking about Greenland tonight. In a post on his personal X account, the governor talking about the sinking of the USAT Dorchester during the Second World War. Now, the ship was en route to Greenland when Germany attacked, killing hundreds of Americans. Now, he's using this story as an example to support President Trump's claim that the U.S. is the only NATO country that is serious about protecting Greenland. All right, back here at home, a new series is highlighting Louisiana's role in American culture. Elizabeth Vowell is here to tell us more. Elizabeth, this is really something that's really exciting here.
It is, and it's something that debuts tomorrow, so it's a great opportunity for anybody to come by and learn a little bit more about Louisiana history, and it's all being hosted for free for anyone at the old Governor's Mansion. And presenting is the former Lieutenant Governor, Jay Darden. And
this is something that is very close and dear to his heart because he loves history.
Yes, so Darden, he's well known in political circles because, of course, he served as the Lieutenant Governor. He was the chief minister in charge of the state's budget for many, many years. But he's also a huge history buff. So he presented a whole documentary with LPB about why Louisiana ain't like Mississippi or anywhere else for that matter. So this is kind of an extension of that. He's going to be posting 4 different history series at the old Governor's Mansion throughout the year. The first one is tomorrow, and it focuses on Louisiana's musical legacy.
And we know our musical history is very extensive. We hit all the right notes when we do that.
Yeah, just to say that is the understatement. So I actually had a chance to sit down with Mr. Darden earlier to talk about this series, and here's what he actually had to say about the music.
The first opera house in America was in New Orleans, for example, and Mahalia Jackson, gospel singer, kind of put gospel on the map during her career, and then you fast forward to rap and bounce, these new genres that have in New Orleans as their origin, and it's not just New Orleans. People think about jazz and think about New Orleans, but the entire state, individuals from the entire state have contributed to all these different aspects of American music.
So Jay Darden says that if you come out, you're actually going to be learning some facts that maybe you didn't know, because some of the musical legacies like Mahalia Jackson and the birthplace of jazz and everything else, people know about that, but there's a lot of the music history that you might not be aware of. So he said he's kind of hoping to shed some light on those lesser known great things. Again, that's going to start tomorrow at the old Governor's Mansion at 5:30. It is free and open to the public.
And the great thing about it is because and he was just talking about how, and you kind of interpreted it, basically breaking it down, saying that the music is in different parts of our state. You have to think about Zydeco music, country music. You just name the different genres, and somebody in the state was a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And he even talked about, you've got of course, you got the big ones, but then even in modern music genres, he mentioned like the rap and the bounce. That's such a big scene in New Orleans and Louisiana throughout the state now. So I mean, all the big names. There's a Louisiana connection. Yeah,
and of course, when you think about bounce music, you have the massive artists like Beyonce, who are sampling bounce music in their music and bring it to a massive audience.
Yeah, very cool. So, and that's a great example. So, and one thing Jay kept saying in our conversation was in so many different cultural areas, Louisiana kind of hits above its weight. So like we're contributing to American culture kind of disproportionately more than other states, which is a really cool thing and something to be proud of, which is another reason they say they're doing this series is sometimes Louisiana, we can beat up on ourselves. We kind of wind up on the bottom of the list, but this is an opportunity to celebrate things that we are really good at.
Because we are at the top. We love that. And again, starts tomorrow.
Yes, and you can watch our whole conversation with Jay, by the way, on WAP.com and our streaming app as well.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you so much.
Of course.
We can't wait to watch that whole thing. All right, so in other news tonight, last July, President Trump, you may remember, he said that the revenue generated by his tariff policy would benefit taxpayers in the form of tariff rebate checks. So listen to this. He then told our Washington Bureau reporter, John Decker, that those $2,000 checks do not need to be approved by Congress.
Kevin Hassett has said that those $2,000 tariff rebate checks would be up to Congress to decide whether or not to disperse that. Do you agree with Kevin Hassett on that, or do you think you can do that unilaterally?
I don't think we would have to go the Congress route, but we'll find out. The reason we're even talking about it is that we have so much money coming in from tariffs that we'll be able to issue at least a $2,000 dividend and also pay down debt for the country. But we'd do a $2,000 dividend to the people of our country. Would probably set a limit of, income limit where it made sense. But we will be able to make a very substantial dividend to the people of our country. I believe we can do that without Congress.
Now, White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett just last month said the checks will depend on what happens with Congress and that he expected the president to bring a formal proposal to Congress sometime this year. In 2020, it was Congress that approved those stimulus checks that went out during the COVID-19 pandemic. Several Republican senators say they're opposed to tariff rebate checks, arguing that they would much rather see the tariff revenue go toward reducing the deficit. Tonight, President Trump easing some economic concerns when he said he won't use force to acquire Greenland. Stocks took a dive Tuesday with major U.S. markets falling about 2%, the worst trading day since October, as investors reacted to the uncertainty between the U.S. and Europe. But now there is a deal that we have been told about. Still hanging over Wall Street's head, though, are those tariffs. The president is threatening 8 NATO members, including France and the UK, with 10% tariffs starting sometime next month, increasing to 25% in June if they don't support his bid to take Greenland from Denmark. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger says many investors would be wise to tune out the ups and downs as they think about their portfolio and 401ks.
Saw that last year was a good model of why you should stick with a game plan and not react to the news. In April, we saw stocks tank down by almost 19%. And then after those tariffs were kind of rolled back a little bit and there was negotiation, the stock market soared. For most long-term investors, your best bet is to try to tune out the noise, stick to your game plan, and try not to make any sudden moves.
Schlesinger says Europe's economy will likely suffer more than here in the U.S., but she expects inflation to remain above 3%, higher than the Federal Reserve would like. In other news tonight, Minnesota faith leaders, business owners, workers, and others are calling for a statewide day of no work, no school, and no shopping on Friday to demand that ICE officers leave the state. Organizers are calling it a day of nonviolent moral reflection and are asking Congress to intervene in the aftermath of Nicole Good's shooting death by an ICE officer and a recent law enforcement surge. The day of protest is expected to include a march through downtown Minneapolis. A number of state leaders are calling for this to continue peacefully, and they came together to express support for the event.
And we are calling for this to be a day where no one shops, no one goes to school, no one goes to work. But instead, we take action together in community, in moral reflection, and in moral action.
Vice President J.D. Vance will visit Minneapolis tomorrow to hold a roundtable with local leaders and community members. The Vice President's office says he will deliver remarks focused on restoring law and order in Minnesota. Congress started a path today that could result in sending Bill and Hillary Clinton to prison. The House Oversight Committee says the Clintons have not complied with its investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. WAFB Washington correspondent Brendan Cullerton reports from Capitol Hill.
Republican James Comer says Bill Clinton is not allowed to dictate terms when it comes to discussing Jeffrey Epstein with Congress. Now, the Oversight Committee chairman is moving toward possible criminal penalties for the former First Family.
Recommending that the House of Representatives find former President William J. Clinton in contempt of Congress.
Representative Comer says he has been negotiating with the Clintons over an Epstein interview for 5 months, and he won't wait any longer.
We've offered flexibility on scheduling. The response we received was not cooperation, but defiance, marked by repeated delays, excuses, and obstruction.
Democrats on the committee say Comer's decision is disingenuous, considering the Trump administration is withholding Epstein documents despite Congress passing a law demanding their release.
The Department of Justice has released 1% of the files. 1% of the files. Where is the pressure to get Pam Bondi to release the files?
Lead Democrat on the committee, Robert Garcia, says the contempt charge is also premature, as the Clintons have negotiated on a possible interview.
Their initial offer was to do that testimony outside of Washington, D.C., with the leadership of the committee and staff. They have been open to transcription.
Comer says the Clintons' refusal to accept the committee's terms is unacceptable and has gone on too long to ignore.
Try to act like Bill Clinton's a victim here, I think is a stretch. We know who the victims are, and I think if you ask the victims, do you want to hear from Bill Clinton? I'm pretty confident I know what the answer will be.
Holding the Clintons in contempt of Congress would eventually require a majority vote on the House floor. It would also be up to the Trump administration to decide whether to press criminal charges. In Washington, I'm Brendan Cullerton.
When we come back, Henry Blakes is up next with a look at that possible winter storm. The winter storm watch is ahead of a chance for icy weekend weather.